Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HR Huddle. I'm your host, Teri Zipper, CEO and Managing Partner at Sapient Insights Group. And I'm back for another exciting episode of HR We Have a Problem. This is the show where we like to break down the big and most relevant HR issues of the day. We like to help you make sense of what they mean, and we talk about what you might do about them. So joining me today is Tim Partasevitch. Tim is the co-founder of Juggl, a new HR tech platform, and he's also Chief Growth Officer at Smart IT. Welcome, Timothy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure being here.
Great. So Tim and I had a conversation a few weeks back and talked a lot about global recruitment because that's what he does. And we got to talking about something that is such a critical process in recruitment. There's almost nothing, in my opinion, that's more important. And yet we don't spend a lot of time teaching people how to do it. I don't, care what kind of IA you have or AI you have, or whether you have the perfect tech to build your short list of potential hires. If you don't know how to interview, you're dead in the water. So today I'd like to talk about how to conduct the perfect interview. And I'm personally hoping to learn something because I don't think I'm that good at interviewing either. So hopefully we'll all take something away from this conversation. And it's something everybody does at some point in their career. So, I think anybody can learn something from this conversation. Does that sound like a good plan to you, Tim?
Yeah, definitely. Let's dive into it.
All right, let's get into the huddle. Yeah. So I know you built some global IT outsourcing teams for startup companies and others. Do you agree with my opening statement about how important the interview process is?
Yeah, definitely. As you said, you can have whatever tools you have. AI doesn't matter if you cannot discern right people for the job. It's doesn't matter how much resources you invest in your HR. At the end of the day, you need to choose the right people. You need to make a choice and you need to evaluate people. And how you do this is through interview. Because one of the problems for hiring managers that I think nowadays is pretty much everyone in the world knows how to do a good CV. It's like you can just Google good CV template and see thousands and thousands of articles and different templates on how to do your CV. And so nowadays they're pretty much all the same. They're just good. All of them are good. If you found the bad one, well, you won't even interview those people. But the second step after you've chosen the list of short list of potential CVs, now you need to interview people and see which one is the best for the job.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. People can have the perfect CV. One of the things I always found that was interesting about the interview process is people spend a lot of time asking them about the stuff that's already on their resume. So you have a limited amount of time, right? To have this conversation. How do you focus the conversation? Because you've got the resume, right? You know where they worked. Mm-hmm. You don't need to ask that question. But so many people just sit and sort of run through that list and sort of ask them what's already there. How do you get around that?
Well, how I get around is you don't ask what's on the CV, unless you have some questions. For example, you see that they had a break between two jobs in several years. So you might ask why was that, because that might be unusual. Well, maybe for some people it was maternity leave or something like that. They can explain why they took a break. But generally, what I usually start with the same question. I ask to tell people about their experience, but I preface this with the phrase, tell me everything that you think I should know as your potential employer. because that immediately will kind of hone them on different. It's not just listing the resume, because they would assume I already saw the resume. Now they need to kind of impress me, and you kind of prime them to impress you.
Yeah, so that's a favorite in Hollywood, right? When you walk into the interview in a movie, it's like, impress me, right?
Yeah. Here's the same. You prime them to impress you. Ask and what this question also does is it allows you to get insight into what they think is important about their experience. Because you ask them what's important, they will not list their entire resume, obviously. So they will only focus on the specific things, and it can give you insight on what they think is important, what they think is valuable about them.
Yeah. I do think there's a bit of a special skill, and being really good at interviewing is a few parts art and a few parts science, right? You can read the book, but there's something about the cachet and the way that you approach it that can bring people into the conversation.
Yeah, just like sales takes practice. Practice makes
yes. It does take practice, takes time. And I don't think a lot of people spend a lot of time on it, because it's not something in most jobs that they're doing every day. Everybody does it at some point, but a lot of people aren't doing it regularly. What's the number one thing you believe you have to learn from an interview? When you walk into an interview with somebody, do you have a single objective that you're trying to come away with out of that first conversation with them? What does that look like? Or how do you develop that? Because it might be a little bit different depending on the job or the organization.
Your primary objective is to figure out, is the person right person for the job that you interview them for? So you need to have a framework ready. And obviously we assume that we're interviewing several people for the same position. So how I usually do is I prepare a particular framework and rough script for the interview and a list of questions, like tests and so on. And I stick with the same list of questions and the same interview, you could say, tricks and framework for each candidate, because I want to make as even field as possible. You don't want to deviate too much from candidate to candidate and run it different, because you want them to be on an even field between themselves. But obviously they don't interact. You're the only point of interaction. So it's on you to make it fair for them. So first of all, make a good framework, make a good script, prepare a list of questions that you would like to ask them, and prepare a list of things that you would like to evaluate them on, and stick with that for each candidate. Because you don't want to ask one particular thing for one candidate and just ask another candidate a set of different questions, because that doesn't seem really fair and effective, because why would you do that? And I saw so many people just go into interview and they just start kind of improvising on the spot, and that can ruin the evaluation process at the very end. And in my opinion, for most jobs, I have, you would say, a motto. What I always say to people is that I can teach them all the skills necessary at the job. What I cannot teach is how to think for yourself. What I'm looking for most in people is it the person who can be taught? Is it the people who can be coached? Because anyone can just, we all been through school and university, college. You can prepare for the exam really, really well, but just learning all the things you need to answer, everything. Just memorizing the answers, it's quite easy. And same with the interview. If you just ask questions regarding whether it be coding, marketing, doesn't matter. If you just ask those typical questions that have right answer and wrong answer, they can just memorize it, or it might be relevant to their experience. And you want to know if it's genuinely their knowledge, or they just done that stuff before. So what I do is I prepare also kind of a test task on the spot, where I put the candidate on the spot. I prime them. I tell them that I'm going to ask a series of questions. There is no right or wrong answer. I just want to see how you think and where your mind will go, and just present them with some challenging situation That might be from like my previous business experience, or I just make it up. And I just want to see what the answer is going to be. And I think that's one of the best way to see if the person is right for the job, because you want to determine how they think. Are they coachable, and can they think outside the box?
Yeah. I think those are good testable questions that obviously vary depending on the type of role. I remember not being asked this question personally, but being in an interview where it was a technical interview and the head of IT asked the interviewee how many ping pong balls would fit in a 15,000 gallon swimming pool. So again, just sort of like, I was sort of taken, I was like, let me think about that. But it's those kinds of questions where you see how they start to think or where their mind starts to go, right?
Yeah, it's not necessarily about coming to the right conclusion.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just start having a conversation. And one of the things that sometimes one of the roadblocks in those questions is a person can just say, I don't know, which is, you can say good enough answer. Like you don't want people start just sprouting everything if they don't know it and guessing. In order to kind of bypass this, I don't know, I usually say, imagine you are in this situation. How would you do it? What questions would you start asking? What would be your actions? Just put yourself in this situation and just kind of go through it. What would be your actions? Even if you don't possess like the technical know-how, just maybe like what would be your process to learn? That's also a thing that you can do. So those are the things like in the interview that I think are most important, just to evaluate whether the person can think on themselves. You should evaluate whether they are the right fit for you. Obviously, you should have like technical questions prepared to just assess their base level of technical knowledge, depending whether it be programming, sales, marketing, doesn't matter. It can be anything. And I think like having a good flow in the interview is also very important. Many interviews go like an interviewer asks a question and then it's a monologue. I don't like those interviews. I don't think they are very productive because like they're very stressful for the person next to you, and they are not really engaged. Well, again, it seems like you're back in high school and you're answering questions from a teacher. That's not what you want as an interviewer. After first or second question, I also tend to do is I say, I don't want that to be a monologue. I think you should have questions for me and you just can chime in, because that's also very important to evaluate a person, what they will ask about you and your company and your team. If they don't have a question for you, that's a red flag, to be honest. Like, why are you there? Like, have you learned everything from the website? I don't think so. Like,
well, did you even look at the website?
Right. Yeah, but even if you did, like most corporate websites are written in a very particular pattern. They're the same. They say, okay, about our company, that's our solution, that's our product. But they're really good questions that in an interview you can ask, like, for example, like, what's his daily process? Like, who will I be working with? Like, what's the team composition? How will, if we, for example, talk about promotion, like what should be the evaluating factors for my growth in a company? Those are really good questions that you will never find on the website. And even like there's a corporate policy maybe in place, it will vary from team to team because it's usually down to your direct supervisor, whether you get a promotion or not. And just asking the supervisor is really, really, really important.
Is there, in your experience, is there a perfect question or maybe even just a question that you ask in every interview, regardless of what level of person you're interviewing? There's this, one question that you always want to make sure you ask.
Well, the first question is like undoubtedly is the one that I prime them to tell about what they think is important, kind of like to impress. One thing that I think is very important is at the very end. after we've conducted like most of the interview, I would ask a person, listen, we've talked already for 40 minutes to an hour. I've asked you questions. You had a chance to ask me questions. Do you think you're going to like working with me as your direct supervisor? I think that's very important to free up situation and give them freedom to say, like, I don't know. Yes, I would like to work with you. And sometimes I had answers, no. Well, like after the interview, no, I wouldn't. And that's really good for you because you might like the person might not like you back, to be honest. That happened to me several times, and that's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes you just personalities don't match, your work styles might not match. Like it's not like the expectations or your expectations were wrong to begin with. And having that question and giving them just the freedom to say no right there and now is really good because you don't want to waste time. You don't want to waste their time. Time is a valuable resource. That's pretty much all you have. So cutting right to the chase and asking them whether they like the interview and would they like to work with you is really important.
Yeah. I think the second part of it, would you like to work with me, is probably more important. My dad always used to say, you don't have to like the person that you're working with, but you have to respect them. Yeah, and definitely. You can learn a lot from them, right? So, yeah, I completely agree. And these days you kind of feel like you have to like them. I think it's just the way we are at this point, right? We want to like the people around us and we want to work for them, right? Or we don't. And then we make other decisions and start to look around. Is there a perfect length of an interview? Do you typically schedule an hour and then just see how it goes?
45 minutes to hour and 15 minutes is perfect interview length. Any interview that is like coming to an end a bit earlier is a red flag for me. Why? Because I think if I don't have anything to talk about with the person next to me for an hour, I'm not going to be able to work, probably.
Yeah. How much time do you spend talking in the interview versus the interviewee? As a rule of thumb.
As a rule of thumb, I think I spend maybe 20 to 30% talking. Depends on how much they engaging me, and it comes back to the importance of them asking questions. Because what are you gonna do? You're gonna do just rambling about the company and everything for 30 minutes? No, not really. But if they have really genuinely good questions, so yeah, I might extend the length of the interview to elaborate on the company structure, the work ethics, etc., etc. Usually, yeah, it's I would say about 20 to 30% of the interview time.
I think that's good advice, because I know some people have a tendency to, as the interviewer, just continue to talk and give them information rather than sort of asking questions and just sort of sitting back and waiting to hear the answer, right? And then engaging in the dialogue versus just, feeling like you have to spill everything. Let me just tell you all about the company. I think people need to think about getting the interviewee to talk as much as possible.
Yeah, nobody likes when you just start rambling about the company if they're not interested. For some people, the job might be just there. They might be just there for money. And to be honest, that's a good reason to be at the job interview. And you might start going about, okay, here are our ethics, here's our work, here's our vision and everything. And the person next to you might not even care about that stuff, and you just bore them. And at the end of the day, they don't want to work. Maybe they have, you should answer questions and talk about things that are interest to them, because they are answering your questions that are of interest to you. And there should be some mutual respect between you.
Do you do a lot of, or do you like joint interviews or panel type interviews? Do you see a place for those? And, any specific suggestions?
It depends on what you're trying to evaluate. And I've done both. I think as an interviewer, that's another, by the way, a good tip. always have somebody with you. Don't ever go to the interview alone, because at the end of the day, you're only human and you want a second opinion always. And you want somebody to just go through, maybe ask their own questions, but generally just be there. Somebody from your team usually just kind of evaluate the person from as a third party. And because sometimes you might just like personality of a person next to you, and you might overlook certain like drawbacks, like technical knowledge is not so good, or to the contrary, you might be impressed very much with their technical know-how and the knowledge of the domain, but again, like the person's soft skills might not be so good, and you would like a second opinion always. Plus, it's very good when you, after shortlist of interviewees and CVs, you usually would go to the shortlist of potential candidates that you would like to give an offer to. And just to make sure that your decision is correct, you would like a second opinion. So that's why having somebody on the interview, on your team there is really good. Regarding to the panel ones, really, it depends. I think the best type of the interview is when one person is in charge of everything, but sometimes you cannot be in charge. Sometimes, for example, things that we've done several times is I'm not really that good into technical knowledge of certain programming languages. So I would have a technical interviewer on my team who would be asking those particular questions, and I'd be more focusing on the soft skills, experience, etc., etc. Sometimes it's just a necessity. When it's a necessity, I don't see any issue, because again, you might not possess certain domain experience or necessary knowledge to evaluate the candidate on their knowledge. So you just bring somebody who has that.
Now, what are some of the metrics that you're using today to determine to make good hires, and how is machine learning or AI helping with this process?
So I don't think that those, after the interview, I don't think that provides you many metrics. It's you usually go by the bullet list and just evaluate from, let's say, 1 to 5 their knowledge. And it's not very objective, obviously. Yeah. But you usually go, you create a bullet list. So how they, in terms of communication, do they have necessary experience? Do they have technical knowledge? What are their soft skills, etc., etc. On the machine learning side and technology, I think those things are very useful as you go through resume gathering, CV gathering, passing through many CVs. That can speed up the work of recruiters and HR personnel. Because again, as a human, you can only pass so much information for so long before you just get tiring of seeing the same CVs over and over. Mistakes are bound to happen. Machine learning and AI don't make those mistakes. They can pass through information really quickly. So if you have a database of CVs and you need to just create this short list of them, you can use technology to your advantage here. But I think right now, where we're at with the technology, it will get better, obviously, with time. But right now, where we're at, it's really good at those initial stages of just passing through dozens and dozens of CVs, just looking whether all potential candidates hit this short list of requirements that you have.
Yeah, we don't have Chat GPT doing interviews yet, right? So
I'm pretty sure somebody has done it, probably. Someone has done it. But right now, again, and you come to the same moral conundrum that is posed by self-driving cars if ChatGPT makes a mistake. So in evaluating candidate, whose fault is that? That's still on you as a hiring manager. So yes. You cannot outsource everything to machine learning. You still need to be the main oversight of the hiring process.
Is there something you would tell people to never do in an interview?
things to never do on the interview? And that's a good question.
So we might have to think about that one and circle back to it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there are a lot of things that you.
Yeah, I don't know why that popped into my head just now. Just thinking about people that are walking into an interview today that already have their sort of plan laid out, and maybe they're going to do something that you would advise not to do, right? Typically, don't do this. And I mean, obviously, we know some of the things, right? You don't ask them about their personal life or how many kids they have or any of those things, right?
Don't antagonize them. Don't go into like personal stuff.
We hope that most people know that by now.
Why do you want to work for our company? I find this question to be very, very annoying. And as like interviewee, I started just answering, I don't know if I don't want to work with you right now. I'm right here trying to figure it out. That was my question. That was my answer, because I hate this question so much. Because in most cases, people are there for the money, let's be honest.
Right.
Or career opportunity, money, those kind of like very selfish reasons. But I don't think that those selfish reasons are bad. Because why do you want to work? Why do you want to hire this person? Because you assume that they will bring more revenue to the company that you will spend on them as a cost. Let's be honest. That's the only reason why you would hire somebody at the end of the day. On the bottom line, you cannot justify hiring somebody who consumes more money from the company that they bring in. So having this question, why you want to work for us, expecting them to recite values or anything else like that is, I don't like it. The better question to me is the one that I list at the very end. Would you like to, after the interview, would you like to work with me? That's so much better than why you want to work for our company. And to be honest, like people, I don't think that many people actually, they see it as working for a company, but at the end of the day, you are a hiring manager and direct supervisor. They are working for you, first of all, not for the company. So that's why I think that question, why you want to work for our company, is bad. I don't think many people give genuine answers.
Yeah. One of the things I heard recently, somebody said they were on their 8th interview, which I just felt like was absurd, that they were having to go through 8 interviews to get, and hadn't even had a job offer at this point. Do you have obviously it depends, right? Mm-hmm. But would you say that's excessive, or, how many interviews would you put somebody through before making a decision? Because 8 seems like an awful lot to me.
I'll be honest. I think it might not be full-blown interviews. Usually how we structure it, and it depends on the size of the company, because when you go to the level of big corporations where like contracts are so much more rigid, the terms and conditions are very different. Number of applicants, obviously, is significantly different from small and mid-sized companies. So they need to pass through so much more. So I can emphasize with the big corporations and kind of this bloat in the process. But I think if you're not like running Google or Apple or like this massive corporation where you're having thousands and thousands of CVs every day, I think what you should be aiming for is one short conversation by the recruiter and HR, one technical interview, kind of like an hour-long interview with the direct supervisor, and a third interview just to kind of pass for the final candidates. So the third interview is not for everyone, is only for the short list of the candidates that you already kind of passed through. So first stage, recruiters, they gather CVs, they have a short conversation, they give brief yes or no. That's kind of your first stage of the funnel. Then you go into an in-depth interview with the direct supervisor. You pass through you create another short list. And then from that short list of the candidates, you go through another interview evaluating which one of them will be better.
Yeah.
So I would aim for 3.
Okay. It's a good number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's psychologically very satisfying.
Yeah.
3 is a good number.
Yeah. Do you have any funny stories or anything that, maybe a funny interview that you've done that just went wrong? Any sort of interesting stories there?
I don't think if I have any funny stories about interview. I have a couple of interesting things that surprised me. So, for example, I remember a long time ago, I was interviewing a person for the position of junior marketing manager at the marketing agency. And the thing that happened is that was the time when I started using the framework where I ask a question with no right or wrong answer. And I just want to see where the candidate will go and what sort of ideas they would provide. And the question was in regards to marketing analytics, Google Analytics, etc. So first I see the CV and I'm really surprised because the first thing, and I think that's where machine learning would be really bad, no relevant experience. Everybody kind of loves that the person even applied for the job. So this person's experience was mostly in hospitality previously, but something really caught my eye is that in a very short period of time, in a very few years, coming from just waitress to the head waitress to head of food and beverages or something like that. So very rapid in just a few years in a very big hotel chain. So thinking 4 seasons, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So that's already impressed me. So already, I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a go. Let's see. That might be interesting. And during that question where I presented with a certain case from one of the businesses that we work with, this person started just brainstorming ideas in good. And the person asked the one question that we never asked inside our team. They asked, did you check if the analytics was stuck correctly? Maybe there was a mistake in the code. And I thought to myself, yeah, we never thought, when we encountered that situation, we never actually thought about it. So that was really interesting because there's a person without experience and they asked the most basic question that I never asked. Obviously, that wasn't the solution, but that was the example when I was pleasantly surprised with the question that somebody might ask and how people can just think for themselves. And I ended up actually hiring that person. No experience previously in marketing, but that answer just killed it. It was a perfect answer. And regarding other interviews, no, nothing I would say funny or anything like it, but so many times I had a really good evaluation just because I was keeping all interviews pretty much the same. Unfortunately, it's very tiring because when you go through, 10 to 20 interviews and you need to repeat same questions over and over, you need to go through this. It's not very exciting because to you already memorized the script and everything. But when you keep everything very concise for the same position, evaluating becomes really, really easy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because everyone is playing on a level playing field. And if you just go in, start improvising and asking questions from the top of your head, everything becomes scattered.
Yeah, I agree. And it does get tiring after a while. Mm-hmm. And you forget, did I already ask this person this question? Because you've asked it so many times that day. It's almost it's a bit of a Groundhog Day conversation. Well, I think, this has been really helpful. I hope people got some things out of this. I made a couple notes here just to summarize some of the things that you said. I think what you said about building your framework and sort of having your script. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to go off script, but you got to have the script to keep you focused. And maybe any assessments that you might need for that particular job. I think having those things planned up front is critical. I like your question about tell me everything that about what you've done that would be important for me to hear as potentially your new employer, the impress me question, right?
Yeah.
And then I like your question, your closing question about.
Well, another thing that I also do a lot on the interviews that I think that we need to add is I ask 2 consecutive questions.
Okay.
I ask people to tell them about the biggest
failure.
Yeah, about the biggest failure that they encountered, that they've done, and how they resolved it. And then subsequently, obviously, I ask what's their most. They has a resume and they have more than 5 years of experience, and they said that they cannot recall any like monumental failure, or not monumental, but just failure in the job. Like I immediately I'm worried.
Yeah.
Nobody's done it. Nobody's that perfect. You have to do something wrong. Just tell me how you resolve the situation. That's more important. And then again, question what they're most proud of in their career. Again, that gives you an insight into their value system and what they think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. So impress me. Make sure you ask them about their biggest fails and their biggest successes.
Yeah.
And then love the question at the end. Do you think you'll like working for me, with me, going forward, to really get their assessment of the conversation? And then the last thing that I think you added was don't go to an interview alone. And I think that's a good
interview alone, and always have prepared questions with no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Tim, this has been a great conversation today. I hope people picked up a few tips. And if you're going into an interview today, that we gave you a little help with that. Where can people find you online and on social media?
Yeah, I'm a marketer without much of a social media presence. I have enough of that on my job. So I don't tend to use much of social media. So best way to reach out to me personally would be probably LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And if you want to learn more about what I do, you can visit Juggl, our website, and our new HR tech product. I'm sure you'll leave somewhere a link in the description.
Yep. Fabulous. All right. Well, I want to, thanks to you, thanks to our producers, Brand Media Group, and our marketing team, Lisa and Zoe, who will pull all this together and get it out to the audience. And thank you for tuning in. That's all the time we have today for this episode of HR We Have a Problem. If you enjoyed the episode, I hope you'll subscribe to it on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review if you have a minute. We'd love to hear from you. You can also drop us a line or schedule some time for a chat on the website. And we will be back in 2 weeks with another episode of HR We Have a Problem. Thanks. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.